This is Kelly Shaefer from Till the Dirt, and you are listening to the Brutally Delicious podcast. Turn it up.
1, 2, 3, 4. The Brutally Delicious podcast. The Brutally Delicious podcast. The Brutally Delicious podcast. The Brutally Delicious podcast.
Hey, there you are. How are you, my friend?
Good, man. How are you?
I'm doing well. Good to see you.
Good to see you as well. How's everything going?
It's great. How's the family?
Really good. Really good. It was nice to come home after tour.
Yeah, I was looking at your pictures and finally catching up with your son again after being out.
Yeah. Hitting the beach. And it's been nice. Nice for sure.
I know this is
How are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks, man. I know this is early for you. Usually we try and do them later in the day, but
Yeah, I just wrote our publicist and I was like, hey man, for future, I'm a much better interview afternoon.
he sent me the thing and said, hey, 11 o'clock. I'm like, well, okay, sure. I've been trying to get Kelly on for a while, but it doesn't work out because he's late and I'm early.
No, you're worth getting up early for, my friend.
Cool. Well, thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you for taking the time. And last time we talked, you had sent us the demos of this stuff, or a couple of these. It's great to see them finally coming to fruition. What's that feel like?
Oh man, with COVID and everything, it took, obviously COVID was the reason why this came together and how this came together, just from the isolation of being able to really just kind of be at home all the time. And so that's how this came to be. But also the double-edged sword of it was that it took, a lot of labels were very backed up with their releases. And so it took 2.5 years to get this thing out.
2.5 years, you got it right onto Nuclear Blast, though. I mean, that's a pretty big step in itself, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I know that me and Scott Burns talked about, there was a period of time where we were, wondering whether labels would be interested in it because it's different. And so there was even a talk of putting together a label. Scott was talking about putting together his own label and releasing it if nobody else did, because, he believed in it that much.
Right.
It was a great feeling, and just having him work with me on it was good enough. But the fact that he was willing to, put together his own label just to make sure that it saw the light of day was a blessing.
You work with Scott a lot down there, right? You guys are partners, pretty much?
No, not at all.
I thought you worked a lot with Scott down there in Tampa.
Well, no, back in the day.
Yeah.
Sure. I mean, 25 plus years ago, Scott hasn't produced anything and hasn't wanted to produce anything in, I think, 25 years. So,
oh, really?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think the last thing he did was in the early 90s. So, yeah, so he was responsible for all the old, for those who don't know Scott Burns, all the new breed kids, he did Obituary, Morbid, Cannibal Corpse, just the list goes on, Atheist, Cynic. So whenever he bowed out back in the day, he became a software engineer and never really, kind of got to go out on the record that he wanted to go out on. And in his own words. So whenever I presented him with these demos, he was just really excited about it and excited for me. And that made me excited and inspired. And so we were able to work on this together. And I think hopefully we'll work on any future Till the Dirt stuff together. But yeah, he's a hard get.
Interesting. That's great. You got him back for that, though. So that's great.
Yeah, I was very, very happy. And yeah, I mean, he's just got an incredible ear and an incredible knack for no bullshit, and like he's so brutally honest that it's for me that's refreshing, because there's nothing worse than so what do you think? Oh, that sounds cool, and no, you need somebody to go, it's garbage,
right?
Or you need to do this, you need to do that, and it's like they say, you don't represent yourself in court. Produce your own record. You have somebody, that could they can give it to you the way you need to hear it. So he was super helpful and all that. And so I would write songs each night and and send them to him, and then we would talk on the phone, and he would say, yeah, we'll try this maybe, or an extra longer chorus, or when my vocals weren't where they needed to be, he was there. So it was done unconventionally, compared to how we worked together back on Piece of Time and Unquestionable Presence.
What was it like writing these songs? I mean, you were writing them in your house at the time, I think, when we talked about it, right? And then did you go to the studio to redo them, or did you how did they morph into what they are now?
No, what's great about this record is it's so in an era where everything is so perfect and pristine and computerized and you know what I mean, and fixed. There's tons of flaws on this record, which I love. I love the fact that it was done. I tracked most of this myself, and I'm not a studio guru by any means, but
Right.
just by default, I wanted to keep the performances that I had, done, because what was happening is I was starting the song at like 7 p.m. and by 2:30 in the morning, I was getting to where I had written the lyrics and I would write vocals. So a lot of these songs happened in one night, and I wrote like 25 songs. So I have a whole nother record right behind this one, and so the vocals that I was doing, I was having a couple drinks, and you get the feeling more courageous and dangerous, and so I wanted to keep that energy. And so the vocals, I feel like on this record, I've never sang like that before. You know what I mean? I've never had that kind of comfort level. Usually the studio is very, you get in your head sometimes. And this was just, I wasn't even thinking about this even ever being an album or a band or any of that. And that's kind of hard to recreate or create that vibe and that scenario, because in every other instance, you're writing towards something, you're working towards a goal of, oh, okay, I've got to write this album, or I've got to write this song, but that was just never the case with this. And I think that lended itself to a genuine honesty, and no pretentious, no pre-thought of, well, where does this fit in, or how will this, there was just none of that shit at all. It was just what do you think of this song? What do you think of that song? But once we got to the end, we did go and mix it at a proper studio. So that was a really kind of the only step outside of a DIY kind of scenario.
Right. Did you approach these songs like trying to be different, or did that just come out? Because I mean, it's death metal, but it's also, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, I'm listening this morning and I almost hear some like 90s grungish kind of stuff in there as well. So did you approach it
100%.
that way, or did you it just came out?
No, I mean, I think that's kind of what led me to, because what happened was I was writing. I had set up a little studio, little laptop, and got a Studio One set up and a DAW, to be able to work on writing riffs for Atheist.
Mhm.
And so I wrote like 3 hours worth of Atheist riffs, and then along came this song, Outside the Spiral. I wrote the whole song, and then I did the vocals. All that happened in one night, and I was like, man, this is really weird. This isn't Atheist. It's not like Neurotica or anything like that. Like my old band. I didn't really. That's kind of what spurred the whole thing. Was I don't know what this is, but it sounds different. So I send it to like Gene Hoglan and Terrence Hobbs and Steve DiGiorgio. I sent it to these different guys that I knew would kind of give me the real shit. And also a writer named Gunnar Sauerman, who was he was our publicist on Jupiter at Season of Mist, and he's a guy that he just didn't like Atheist, and I knew that he would be honest with me if I sent him this. He would tell me the truth, and so I figured if I could make it, if he says it's okay, then I'm probably onto something different, because it had like a black metal vibe, and I'm not a black metal guy at all. You know what I mean? Like it had just a dark, icy kind of tone. So anyway, so that first song happened, and then I just from there, that template just kept happening. But I love stoner rock, and I love old Sabbath. My go-to is like Caius, Sabbath. Anything that's groovy and thick. I love that, and you don't get to do a lot of that in death metal. And and I also love this Soundgarden, old Soundgarden especially, and obviously Alice in Chains. Is a the Seattle vibe to me, most of it was really, really good. Those two bands in particular. And so yeah, this hybrid sort of happened, and Scott Burns heard that vibe, and we just kind of thought, that's interesting. That's what we thought would probably make it difficult to get it signed. Once I had a series of songs, because I had a whole bunch of songs, and laid them on Scott, and we were just trying to figure out where does this fit in, and it doesn't. And that's why Scott, I think, liked it. Because the thing he liked about all the bands back in the '80s, in the early days of Tampa death metal, was every band was different. Obituary was different than Atheist. Atheist was different than Cynic. Cynic was different than Morbid Angel. Like so, and each band was original. So that's a big deal to Scott, was the originality. And this was definitely, like it or not, this Till the Dirt is it's a very original. It's different. So it's going to take a while for maybe some people to absorb it, just because of the different hybrid quality of it, I think.
But I think, being outside of the box is something sort of cool too. I mean, I don't know that Atheist fans may gravitate towards it because it's not as progressive, but I think it on its own, like you listen to the Outside the Spiral, and I mean, I'm sucked into it. You find new layers of it every time I listen to it, right? You do have those black metal vocals at some point, but you do have that Seattle thing in the choruses, and there's like all this stuff going on at once.
Yeah, it's and it's listenable. Yes. I mean, on a level that's interesting. Whereas sometimes for people to listen to Atheist, it's you got to really be in that headspace. To be able to Atheist is not background music at all. You really got to sit there and listen to it. Not that this is background music, but this is just a little easier to kind of groove to and listen to. So I think that yeah, it's fun to have this, and I still can't believe that, this all came to fruition. And, we're sitting here talking about a record that's coming out in a couple of weeks. And, it's my first record since 2010. And it's also the first time I played guitar on a record since 1993, wow. which is fun for me, because the rumor for a couple of decades is, oh, Kelly can't play guitar, and he's got something wrong with his hand. There's all these different myths of what's wrong with my hand, right. and it's just I can play guitar, I just can't stand and play, so I don't play on stage anymore. But I've never stopped playing guitar, and so for me it feels good, a little bit of redemption to the folks that definitely do.
That's perfect. Hey, is when you were writing this, is there any sort of message or takeaway you want your fans to walk away from after listening to Outside the Spiral? Yeah. So, with older fans, I would say, or people that were familiar with me with Atheist, I would say, remember how confused and unsure you were about Atheist, and look at how it played out, and look at how technical metal sort of became a forest of bands, as opposed to just a couple of trees, Atheist and Cynic, and just keep that in mind for what's going on right now. So if it feels uncomfortable to listen to, that's good. You know what I mean? If you're confused about the hybrid quality of it, just allow it to soak in a little bit, because I've always said that you should never fully get a record the first time you hear it. You should never be like, oh, I get it, there it is, and it's this, it's that, and sometimes it takes a few listens to really kind of go, oh, all right, holy shit, there's a lot of different vibes going on here, a lot of different things, and so I would hope that they would give it the time, and not just one of the worst things about getting reviewed with a band, a brand new band, is a lot of guys like yourself, if you're reviewing in a magazine, you got 10 CD reviews to do by the end of the week. You throw it in one time real quick, and then you write your opinion, and that opinion stays forever and ever and ever. And then other people read that opinion and go, well, I don't like that kind of shit, so I'm not even going to listen to it. And so that's a really tough spot to be in as an artist, because you just get moved off to the side. So I would just hope that everybody will allow yourself to do, to absorb something new. It's definitely, it's different. And, you're not supposed to sort of combine those qualities of Seattle and stoner rock with extreme metal. But who says that, really? I mean, right? Who cares?
Well, I'm with you on that. I think that, that it's important that things like that do happen musically, and I think that you get some really great moments in music if you allow that as a listener to happen. And also, we were talking about the black metal thing, because I know black metal people are very guarded, with their music, and I understand that, but also understand that like my vocals before there was black metal, like real, like literally genre, my vocals have always been that way, always been sort of high, witchy, kind of creator-esque. I was never that guy.
Right.
So people may think that like I use the term black metal because I know that kids today will recognize that. Okay, I like that kind of vocal as opposed to the deep, growl. So, but it's really not in any other way black metal other than I
Right.
just think that my vocals have been that way for a long time, and it just happened to fall in line with a lot of a lot of black metal vocalists. So, but it's I also got to use my singing voice, which most people in the atheist world never got to. I never would use that voice in an atheist context, so there's a lot of new things happening, and in terms of if somebody's a fan of something I've done in the past, there's some new gems.
But even if they're not, it's a good record, right? I mean, we were just talking about, things morphing, and I think music has to sort of change and morph and evolve, right? You can't keep writing the same records and you can't keep writing the same genre, same tempo, same bullshit, right?
Right. Absolutely. I mean, I can't. I mean, certainly there are many who do, and
Right.
they may have some success at it. And I think that was one of the reasons why Scott hasn't produced a record in a long time, is because a lot of the things that were offered to him were just basically the same offerings
Cookie
that
cutter stuff, right?
yeah. And so when he heard this, the funny thing is, we had such a great conversation the first time we reconnected after 20 years. And when I told him I had new music, he wasn't exactly like, he was kind of a little worried that he was going to have to, call me back and be like, oh man, we had such a great conversation, but this
Right.
sucks.
I'm gonna fuck it up, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, there was never, in the beginning, it was just, friends talking, and at the end of the conversation, I was like, oh, by the way, I have some new music, and he was like, oh, okay, and so I sent it, and then so the rest happened from there. So that was cool. It was a good feeling, that, and it's nice as a musician to have happy accidents happen like that. And when we were talking about flawed, when I say it's flawed, I just mean that it's there's mistakes on there, and there should be mistakes on every record. Even I heard Steven Tyler talking about Sweet Emotion, and in the beginning there's that I forget the name of that instrument that they use, but the instrument broke on when they were doing the actual take in the beginning, and they left it on there. I saw the Police. Stuart Copeland was talking about. What I can't think of the song for the Police, but in the beginning of the song, Sting was waiting to do his vocal, and he sat on a piano, and his butt like made a chord, and then he started laughing, and they left that on the beginning of the song, and it's such a classic moment. So there's a lot of those things that I hear on this record that I just left on there. I mean, I did these vocals sitting in my house with my 3-year-old at the time watching Paw Patrol, like
Right.
literally not in a vocal booth. I used a 58, which is a handheld
Yeah.
microphone. Everything about it is wrong, wrong, wrong. You're not supposed to do it that way. And but that's the way I did it, and I left it that way. I didn't go back in and redo them because I wanted to keep those 2 o'clock in the morning performances, and I've said in a couple of other interviews, and it's hard to not cheapen this, but or sound cheapen this, but I've never written music while having beverages, like having
Right.
shots, and so anybody that goes out and has a couple drinks knows you feel a little more talkative, a little more courageous. You're able to communicate in it on a different level. Well, you translate that to music, and that's why this record sounds so angry and so different and pissy in it. And I always try to find words to describe, but it just sounds much different than I've ever sounded before. So I could really kind of feel very third person about it. Like I can listen, like I would wake up the next day and listen and just be like, who is that guy? And it's many ways you think about, when you go out and you have a couple drinks and you think about it the next day, like, oh God, I hope I didn't
Right.
say
What did
anything
I
bad to
say?
Tom.
Right.
I hope I didn't say anything bad to Sally. You just tend to be a little more vocal, and that lent itself to this record, and so that became my little formula. Okay, I'm gonna have a couple of Jaeger bombs, and then let's go.
Right.
Let's see what we get into tonight. And before I knew it, I had 25 songs sitting in front of me, and going, now what do I do? What do I do with these? So. Yeah, it's cool.
So
Everything about this has been a cool experiment.
that to me seems like the older way of doing it, right? The more classic way of recording and doing records and making music, and it's raw, it's real, and it's organic, right? A
Yeah,
lot of the people
absolutely.
now are doing records where everything is perfectly quantized and everything is perfectly gated, and so I see what you're saying, and I think that makes a difference, really.
Yeah, I think I've now I will say that this was the first, with all the Atheist records that we ever made, we never used a click track or any of that. Everything was very alive and speeding up and slowing down. I did play most of this to a grid, but the performances within the grid are flawed, in the sense
Right.
that I also I'm tuned down a lot. So playing in B, in the key of B, I've never, all the Atheist stuff is in 440E. So it's all so playing down that low. A lot of times you strike the string and it goes just a little out of tune. And so if you have four guitars and they're just a little bit out, I like that shit. I like that flaw. I mean, I don't want it to be perfect.
Right.
So you'll hear songs like "Forced Because," when you hit the down, it's like, they're just slightly out of tune a little bit, and it makes it just, I don't know, it lends itself to a rawness that these days would a normal studio engineer or producer would be like, oh, we got to fix that.
Yeah.
It's a tiny bit out of tune, and so I like those things. I like those mistakes, and vocally as well, because I did the vocals the way they did, the way I did with a handheld mic. Sure, I could have gone in to do them in the studio with a proper pantyhose in front of the microphone, and
Right.
and done it like that. But I was like, I don't know that I'll be able to recreate that 2:30 in the morning way I felt when I was, screaming, like,
Right.
like so I just left it all like it was, and for better or for worse, and it turned out good. It turned out cool.
Beautiful.
So,
So I know we're getting to the end here, but any plans on putting this on the road?
oh, absolutely. I hope, at the end of the day, I mean, I hope people enjoy it enough to where those opportunities present themselves. But this is 100% a band that I hope to. I think one of the unique things about this is none of this music has been performed ever. So in a traditional setting, you as a band getting together in a room, I wrote all this stuff by myself and then put the band together. And obviously had a lot of guests on the album. Jeff Loomis and Steve DiGiorgio. Steve plays on Outside the Spiral, did a phenomenal job with fretless bass, and I just let him choose what song he wanted to play on, and
Nice.
and he chose Spiral. So he did such a great job, and so and I have a lot of a couple of the old Atheist guys. Played guitar, and Yoav, our current bass player, played bass on most of the record, and yeah. But now this is 100% a band, and I look forward to actually. I think these songs in a live setting are going to be crushing. I mean, I think that they lend themselves to a live setting. So absolutely, 100%. I look forward to taking the band out on the road.
I'm hoping to I know this, I'm going to put it out in the universe here, but hopefully 70K.
Oh man,
Yeah.
that's one of the best gigs ever, no matter what band I'm in. I
Yeah.
love that gig. I mean,
Yeah.
we've done it twice, and it's just so fun. And I always tell people that's probably one of the best festivals there is. That and Wacken and Hellfest are top three for me. In terms
I've
of
never been to the other ones, but I've been doing, interviews and press on 70K since 2011 and absolutely love it.
Have you ever been?
Oh yeah, I've been 11 times. Well, every
Oh,
time. So since
oh, okay.
2011, I've been going doing
Did we
press.
meet?
Yeah,
Is that where we met?
absolutely.
Okay, yeah, okay. I remember. Yeah, what a fun time that is, man. I cannot put enough words to how much fun we have on that thing. And
Yeah.
even though you got to do two shows, it's and sometimes they're at three. One of them was like at 3 in the morning.
Yep.
but there's it's it's heaven, for lack of a better word, because you've got it's just all people that love what you love. And I remember
A big
seeing
metal family.
oh my God, yeah. And when you go to dinner, you're in this really fancy restaurant. I remember looking over and seeing the I guess what do you call it, the maitre d' or whatever, the walking Kronos to his table.
Yeah, isn't that crazy?
Where am I ever going to see that again in my
Right.
life? Where Kronos is being walked to the table by some guy in a suit,
Pretty cool stuff.
Yeah, I love it. And then you go up on the pool deck, and there's anybody is sitting up there, getting some sun, hanging out, and it's a great way for fans as well to meet and interact with all their favorite metalheads. And for me as a guy in a band, I really enjoyed meeting all the people as well, and having those great conversations, be it around the pool or in the bar, and probably the best thing about 70K is the karaoke.
Yeah.
The fucking karaoke, man, is unbelievable. Because I mean, you got Frank from Suffocation singing fucking Frank Sinatra, or you got and it's not your typical. It's not like a bunch of metal guys getting up singing metal songs necessarily. They're up singing a bunch of different kinds of things, and and the jam, that they put together.
That's a great time. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just I highly recommend that anybody who's on the fence about going to 70K, get your ticket. It's always fun, no matter who's playing.
Yeah, and we're gonna throw it out there. Till the Dirt is my I'm throwing it out in the universe, man. We'll catch you up there.
Yeah, that would be amazing.
Thank you, my friend. It's always good seeing you. Good luck with the record. I'll keep in touch with you online, and I put it out there. We'll see you on the boat.
Thank you so much. Cheers.
See you, man. Bye.
Bye.